If your objection is based on Rule 702, it's overruled. You may continue.
Okay, Officer Foster, I believe we were interrupted when you were talking about how the defendant did on the horizontal gaze and seconds test.
That's correct.
Can you tell us?
Sure. The first part of the test, which was holding finger in a fixed position, I noticed a pronounced jerking of the eye. Then I moved my finger to the left and to the right. Miss Dawson lacked smooth pursuit, or more simply, her eye didn't follow smooth with my finger, but instead, my finger got a ways away, then she jerked and caught up. And then my finger got a ways away, and then she jerked and caught up. And then finally, the angle in which her onset occurred of nystagmus was very short. It was only a few degrees, and her eye started jerking. Somebody who's not under the influence of alcohol or doesn't have alcohol in their system can typically go as far as 45 degrees before their eye would begin jerking.
All right, Officer Foster, let's talk about the second test that you performed. You said you performed a heel-to-toe test.
That's correct.
What does this test entail?
The heel-to-toe test is exactly as it sounds. I demonstrated it for Miss Dawson, and then I had her perform it. It's simply taking 9 steps, heel to toe, turning and walking back.
So how did the defendant do on this test?
Miss Dawson stepped out of line on multiple occasions and almost fell when she turned to return.
Okay, Officer Foster, now the third and final test, you said it was the one-legged standing test.
That's correct.
Can you tell us what this test entails?
The one-legged stand test is a test of one's coordination and ability to follow instructions. It sounds simple, but there's a couple of rules. We demonstrate it for him, but we have him stand 1 foot approximately 6 inches off the ground and parallel to the ground with their hands at their sides, and then begin counting from 1,000 forward. For a normal person, this is pretty easy to do, but for somebody who has alcohol in their system, it may be more difficult.
Now, how did the defendant do on this particular test?
She put her arms out on multiple occasions to regain her balance. She had to put her foot down in order to regain her balance, and at one point she hopped. And then in terms of counting, she stopped counting on several occasions, and she missed a number as well.
So, Officer Foster, were the field sobriety tests the last thing you did for this trial?
No, they were not. I was also the officer who performed the fatal crash team report, so I returned the following day to do an investigation.
All right, so let's talk about the fatal crash team report. First of all, can you tell the jury what a fatal crash team report is?
Well, in the City of Midland Center, whenever there's an accident that involves a fatality, we do a more thorough analysis of the accident rather than just a police report as we would in a typical fender bender. So what I would do is I go out and I investigate everything that I can find at this accident scene, whether that would be marks left in the road, the condition of the vehicle, the dents in the vehicle, and then I determine, like an accident reconstructionalist, what occurred and what the causes of this accident are, and then those are published in a report.
Okay, now, Mr. Foster, how do you come to these conclusions? Is there a specific scientific method, something like that?
Well, based on my training...
Objection, Your Honor. Vague. The question is vague, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
Your question was again?
my question was if there was any sort of specific scientific formula or anything that he
For?
used to come to the conclusions of the fatal crash team report. If the witness understands, I believe he's going to...
Your Honor, if that was a question, then I withdraw my objection, but I believe there was something else, but I might have misheard.
All right, thank you. Withdrawn.
Well, based on my training and experience, we've been taught to follow a particular protocol. And our protocol is best outlined in an article written by Windsor, and basically it's called combined speed formula. In there we combine the variables of the damage to the vehicle by the measurement of how far...
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. He's referring to a document, and he's mentioning what the document says. That's hearsay.
Your Honor, we're not offering this for the truth of the matter asserted. We're just stating how this witness came to his conclusions. So, to say this is hearsay, it's not.
Are you laying the foundation for the basis for his conclusions?
Exactly, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may be heard.
Yes.
Opposing counsel just mentioned that he wasn't using it for the truth of the matter asserted. But for this witness to talk about the article, it is being used for the truth of the matter asserted. That he used this article in coming to his conclusion. He used this article to make his speed formula, his speed calculations. That's being used for the truth of the matter asserted.
Your Honor, if we look at Rule 703, we can see that an expert witness, which I'm going to qualify this witness as in a second, can use hearsay to come to their conclusions.
Do you agree?
I do, Your Honor, but may I point you to a case law? It's called Richards versus Mississippi Barbecue.
And where can the court review that?
It's under the available case law you have.
You want to refer me to a page that might
It's on
speed
page
things
3, Your
along?
Honor. Page 3 of the available case law. May I approach them?
I'm trying to find where the available case law is. Hold on.
It was also tendered to you
Your Honor,
early in
may I
the
approach?
trial.
Sure.
It should be in order. Which one were you referring
It's
to
on
again?
page 3, Richards versus Mississippi Barbecue.
Thank you. Let me just review that one moment. Well, this says the court must distinguish experts relying on hearsay to form scientific conclusions from conduits who merely repeat what they are told. The testimony of the former is admissible, that of the latter is not. I think his testimony falls within the category of the former, which would be admissible.
May I be heard on that, Your Honor?
Sure.
We believe that Officer Foster is being a conduit for hearsay. He's simply just going to read the article and apply the formula that is in the article. He's not applying
Right,
any...
he's applying it. He's not just simply relating the article without, he's using the information in the article to form his scientific conclusions. He's not merely repeating it without having applied it to his own research. So
Right.
your objection's overruled. You may continue.
So, Officer Foster, we were talking about the fifth question. Now, what do you use to come to your conclusions?
Well, in its simplest sense, it's called the combined speed formula. What the combined speed formula is it looks at 3 different aspects of an accident in order to determine what the speed of the vehicle was before it entered the accident phase. First variable is the actual impact to the vehicle. By looking at the amount of denting caused to the front of the vehicle, we can figure out the speed when it finally impacted. In this case, the front bumper was in about 8 inches, which would indicate about 40 miles per hour. The door was in approximately 24 inches from utility pole, which is about 20 miles per hour. When combined into the formula, adding with the distance that the vehicle traveled from when it first left the roadway, and then the actual roadway surfaces itself as the last variable, or a drag factor. And in that case, I do a sample of 10 feet of 2 sections where the car came in contact with. One where it exited the road and was on the grass, and one as it crossed the road. Combining all of these together and the distance that they traveled, I'm able to determine the speed the vehicle was going before the accident began.
So, Officer Foster, are these principles widely used in the field?
Yes, any sort of accident reconstructionist follows these same principles and will be able to determine how an accident, or what the speed the vehicle was going before an accident began.
Were you able to get data for all the variables that you just talked about
Yes.
from the field?
Yes, the data for the vehicle was from, the amount of impact was from the vehicle itself. I was able to take measurements. The data for the roadway was twofold. I measured the distances it traveled, the data for it exited, and I also did a sample of the drag factor on that road. And then where it exited the road and was traveling along the grass, I also was able to take a measurement of that distance and a drag factor for that area. And then in the article, the Windsor article I referred to, it has a chart that gives us a set of high and lows to expect in the drag factors for an area like grass and for an area like wet paving. So I'm able to use my drag factor number, compare it to the chart to be sure that it's accurate. And in this case, I came in at right around the medians in each of those predicted results.
So, Officer Foster, so you were able to reliably apply the data to the specific situation?
Yes, I was.
So, Officer Foster, how fast was the vehicle going based on the combined speed formula?
Based on the combined speed formula and each of the variables that I talked about added into that formula, I determined the vehicle was traveling 66 miles per hour just before it exited the roadway and this accident began.
What's the speed limit on Canyon Road, Foster?
Canyon Road has a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross?
Yes, Your Honor.